Hope everyone had a great weekend. And I wanted to talk to you tonight about the difference between the false identity and the true identity. It's not going to be an exhaustive talk on it, but just something that I wanted to share with you from what has become one of my favorite passages in the Bible. It's probably a passage that I think about at least every day, and I would say multiple times a day, because it's become that central to my life. So anyhow, we'll get there in a second. But how was your weekend? What did you guys do? This is actually my birthday weekend. Today's my birthday. I turned 51 today, believe it or not. I know you're shocked by that because I don't look a day over 42, I'm sure. So, yeah, I spent my weekend. My day off is on Friday, and so I've got a Skag. I live on 5 acres, so I've got a Skag commercial mower, and I've gotten a lot of work out of that thing, and been pretty rough on it. In fact, last year I flipped it at the back of our property. I was mowing along the creek, and the bank gave away, and it flipped over. And I had no idea that the creek back there was that deep, but it's about 5 feet deep where I went in, and the mower actually flipped over and I couldn't get out from underneath the handlebars, and it actually pinned me to the bottom. And I really don't know, I don't remember how long I was underwater. You know, when you're under there, there's no way to really know. I'm guessing it was probably 30 seconds or something like that, and struggled a little bit, and finally realized I was stuck, and I stopped and just said, "Oh God, will you please get me out of here?" And so then I gave it an extra push and pushed really hard and was able to kind of squirm loose. And then when I was coming up, my shirt actually caught on something, and so I had to reach down and rip my shirt up. And then I came up and was able to make it. And believe it or not, somehow that mower still pretty much runs. But here I am about a year later, and the engine wasn't. Blew a head gasket or something. So you may not know this about me, but I can fix stuff. And so I bought some of the parts. I pulled the whole motor off of my mower this weekend and partially rebuilt the engine and got it mounted back. And so I don't know if you can see, it took me 2 days to try to get my hands cleaned up, but I had grease all over them and under my fingernails. I went to church today looking like like a mechanic, I guess. So anyhow, I don't know why I got off on that, but that's what I did this weekend. And then today was my birthday, and had church, obviously. And then tonight, my wife and my family asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, you know what? I just want to take it easy. Some burgers on the grill, some homemade French fries, and my favorite dessert. I'm not a cake eater. I don't like cake that much, but I do love tres leche cake. If you've never had tres leche cake, you got to get a good one and try it sometime. It's amazing. And so my wife went and got one of those for me, and we had that for dessert. So, anyhow, way off topic. I'm sure you're not that interested in all that. But let's talk about Romans 12:1 and 2, and Romans 2 specifically. And I'm just going to read this to you in the New International Version. It's probably the version, if you're familiar with the Bible, it's probably what you're most familiar with. And so I'll read that to you, but then I want to come back and read it to you. If you recall, if you watch many of my videos, you know this, that I have a Bible that I just have fallen in love with over the last couple of years, and it's written by Kenneth West, and it's the New Testament. But you see down here, it's says an expanded translation. And basically what he says is he translated this and says that he uses as many English words as necessary to fully convey the meaning, power, and force of the Greek that it was written in. So, hey, Pastor Rich, how are you doing, man? Good to see you tonight. We need to get together. Want to catch up with you guys. So, anyhow, I'm going to read it to you in the NIV, and then I'm going to come back to it and read it to you in this expanded Greek translation. And what I want to talk about is the difference between the false identity and the true identity. And remember, what I've been saying is that most of us walk around most of our life in our false identity. We never figure out what our true identity is or what the name is that God has for us. And really, that's tragic because we really develop our identities, which really is our false identity, from what other people say about us, from what we do, and from what we have. Okay, and maybe some other things mixed in there, but we form a false identity basically from our life experience. While that's real, it did happen. and people did say those things or whatever, that's real, but it's not true. Not always true. So you've heard me say what's real is not always true, but what's true is always real. And we'll do another video on that one day and explain that a little bit further. But it's important that we get out of the false identity and get into the true identity, because we are never going to experience the abundant life. In John 10:10, it says that Jesus came to give us life and to give it to us abundantly. Or in this one, he translates that and says to give us life and to give it to us super abundantly. That means overflowing to the point that it's not only great for us, it's great for everyone that's around us. And that's the kind of life I want to live. And so we will never experience the super abundant life as long as we're walking in this false identity that we get from our life experiences, rather than going to our God, our Creator, the one who loves us, the one who knit us together in our mother's womb, and going to him and say, God, who do you say that I am? Okay, regardless of my experiences, who do you say that I am? Okay, well, I'm getting way off topic. We're already at 6 minutes. So I'm going to read this to you in the NIV. I'm going to read, this is Romans 12, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And 1 is not what I want to concentrate on, except for there's just a little piece in there, okay? But 2 is the verse that I'm talking about, that is a thing that I think about every day, and actually multiple times a day. So here it is in the NIV, Romans 12, 1 and 2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. And then verse 2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And so, that first one is that we need to offer our bodies. And that means everything about ourselves we need to offer to God as a sacrifice. That means my thoughts. That means what I look at, what I say, the air I breathe, the words I hear, what I do with my body, the food I put in it, the exercise I give it, the places I go, the things I see, whatever. That I need to make all of that a living and holy sacrifice to God. And it says that's your true and proper worship to him, is when we do that. Now, verse 2, do not conform to the patterns of this world. Some translations will say, don't be squeezed into the world's mold, or do not conform to the patterns of the world, as this one says, okay? So what we need to understand is that we walk around and we tend to decide how we're going to live based on the pressure and the expectations that we create just by looking at what's going on around us and what other people are doing. But that's not the way we're supposed to be living. We are not supposed to be living according to the patterns of the world. There's another way to do it. And so the patterns of the world would be a false identity. If I'm going to form my identity from my life experiences, what I do, what I have, and what other people say about me, those would all be patterns of the world. And getting my identity from that would be a pattern of the world. That's being squeezed in to the world's mold, okay? So it's saying, don't be conformed anymore to the patterns of the world, but be transformed. That means changed in form. That's metamorphosis is the original word there. Be transformed. Be changed in form, and a permanent change is what that means, by the renewing of your mind. And the renewing of your mind is, oh gosh, I just blanked on it. Metanoia, which means change of mind, okay? Change of mind, change of belief. And so we might call that repentance. That means to change your mind, change your belief, and go in a different direction. And it says when we do that, then we'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Okay, so that's all in the NIV. Now, I've got this pulled up on my phone from the Expanded Greek translation. Where'd it go? I had it. Back up. Romans 11, Romans 12. Okay. One's going to be really wordy. Don't get hung up on it except for just the last piece. Verse 1 says, I therefore beg of you, please, brethren, through the instrumentality of the aforementioned mercies of God, by a once-for-all presentation, to place your bodies at the disposal of God, a sacrifice, a living one, a holy one, well-pleasing, your rational sacred service. And then in parentheses it says rational, in that this service is performed by the exercise of the mind. Okay, so hang on to that. And then verse 2, check this out. I love in this translation, and again, remember, he is taking the original language and trying to be as accurate as he can, and he's willing to use as many English words as he needs to fully capture the meaning of the Greek that this was written in, okay? So here's verse 2. And stop assuming an outward expression that does not come from within you and is not representative of what you are in your inner being, but instead is patterned after this age. See that? Man, is that a great definition of false identity? Stop assuming an outward expression. Stop acting outwardly in a way that does not come from within you and is not representative of what you are in your inner being, but it is patterned if after this age. Okay? And so remember, if we go back to Psalm 139, it says, God, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My mind can't even wrap around how wonderful your works are. That means there has to be a little level of the way that I worship and honor God is by loving who he made me to be. Now, this isn't a pride thing. This isn't narcissistic. This is actually humbling to think, oh my gosh, God, the person that you made me to be is awesome and beautiful and wonderful. And it says God can't stop thinking about us. It says he put us together thread by thread. He was weaving us together, carefully putting into us everything that he put in us. And so what he's saying is, again, stop this outward expression that doesn't come from within you and is not representative of what you are in your inner being, but is patterned after this age. In other words, it's conformed to the patterns of the world. And then it goes on, but change your outward expression to one that comes from within and is representative of your inner being. And how do we do it? Here's the clue. By the renewing of your mind. That's how we do this. So how do we get out of the false identity and into the true identity? How do we be transformed from false identity to true identity? By the renewing of our mind. So metamorphosis comes from metanoia. Change in form comes from change of mind. So, but change your outward expression to one that comes from within and is representative of your inner being by the renewing of your mind. And then it goes on to say, resulting in your putting to the test what is the will of God, the good and well-pleasing and complete will, and having found that it meets specifications, place your approval upon it. Okay? So I'm not going to preach a whole lot more. Again, I went about double the amount of time I wanted to, but of course I had to tell you my story about my mower and me using it as a submarine. Anyhow, how do we get out of the false identity into the true identity? We do that through the renewing of the mind. We can be changed in form, a permanent change, and our outward expression can become a true expression of who God really created us to be inside, who he created us to be in our mother's womb. And if you go back and listen to some of the previous videos that I've shared with you a few of the characters in the Bible and how they came out and said, man, God, this is who you made me to be in my mother's womb. I've figured out my true identity, who I'm supposed to be, and therefore what you've called me to do. And so how do we get from false identity to true identity? How do we change in form? We do that through change of mind, renewing of the mind, or metanoia. And again, I've shared with you what that process looks like. It's very simple, but sometimes you need a guide. And so this is something that I'm starting to do is we're working with a lot of different people on this, on how do we exchange the false for the true. And we've got to deal with fear, guilt, and shame. We've got to go back and find out where the root of that is. We have ways to do that, to guide you through it. Ultimately, it's hearing from God. I can't tell you all of that. God can. I and some friends have developed kind of a process. Very simple. We can walk you through it and help you kind of get rid of all of this stuff from your past and all of this stuff that is a pattern of the world, all the stuff that's false, so that you can get to the point where you can ask God, God, who did you make me to be in my mother's womb? Who do you say that I am? What's the name that you have for me? And you can hear him. He wants to tell you that, and he wants you to know that. So a few of you have already kind of contacted me about this and would love to work with some more of you. My dream is to actually do this with teams, whether that be a church staff or a company or a corporation. We've seen where this can actually transform teams too, because when we get everybody in their true identity on a team working together, well, I'm going to talk about that one day. What happens when a whole team gets into their true identity, it is unbelievable what can happen. So that's it for tonight. Hope you have a great start to your week. Back in the work week tomorrow. Hope you had a great weekend, and we will talk again soon. See you.